Time now for one full hour of nitro-fueled NHRA talk. It's The Straight Line, presented by O'Reilly Auto Parts with Marty Hough and 10-time NHRA winner Doug Herbert. Brought to you by Hercules Tires. Now, here's your hosts, Doug and Marty.
This is The Straight Line on Drag Racing. Thanks for being here for our half hour of horsepower. Appreciate you being with us. Jack Beckman finally gets into the funny car winner's circle in 2016, and he'll talk with us about his Route 66 Wally win. Also, a look back at a cool moment with a drag racing champion and a Major League All-Star. The burnout is complete, and we're set to launch another edition of The Straight Line. Wherever you may be, coast to coast around the world, this is The Straight Line on MRN.com. My name is Marty Hough, back here at the Concord, North Carolina studios of the Motor Racing Network. And joining us right now on the telephone line, as he will be for the next couple of weeks, somewhere out in sunny Southern California, is our good friend, four-time IHRA Top Fuel champion and 10-time NHRA National Event winner, Doug Herbert. Where do we find you today, Mr. Herbert?
Hey, Marty. Well, we're actually sitting here close to the PRI headquarters in sunny Southern California.
Nice.
And getting a little bit of work done, trying to keep up on everything going on at Chicago and in drag racing so we can talk a little bit and have some fun.
Now, obviously, we talked about this last week, and as I said, in the next couple of weeks, you'll be in California taking care of business, and business for you right now is mainly brakes. What is happening this week with brakes, and if people are interested, where do they find where the classes are this weekend?
Well, the next couple weekends, the next few weekends, we've got a bunch of things going on out here in Southern California. This past weekend, we had our classes at VMAX Dragway. This weekend coming up, we've got classes at Pomona, at the Pomona Dragway. So if you're in the area up there, I think there's still a couple spots left maybe for this weekend. So go to the Put on the Brakes website, check that out. Next weekend, we're going to be at the California Speedway in Fontana. And I know we've got a few openings for the Fontana next weekend, so help us get the word out on that.
All right.
And then the following weekend, we're going to be in San Diego at Qualcomm. So we're going to be getting around here in Southern California a lot.
Wow, and Qualcomm Stadium, of course, that's the home of the San Diego Chargers. The Major League Baseball All-Star Game was just a couple of days ago out there in San Diego, so lots going on down there. Don't want to start the show on a sad note, but a note definitely worth talking about. A couple of days ago, one of the pioneers of speed, shall we say, in drag racing and a lot of different things. Art Chrisman died at the age of 86 years old. And I know, Doug, you had a special connection with Art Chrisman because he had a special connection with your dad and really innovating racing and drag racing specifically.
Well, that's true. Art Chrisman was one of the original pioneers. You know, there's not too many of these guys left now.
Yeah.
You know, my dad was one of those guys, Vic Edelbrock Sr., Ed Iskandarian, Art Chrisman, Jack Chrisman, Howard Johansson. I mean, all these guys are the guys that started hot rodding with, of course, with Robert Peterson and Wally Parks and C.J. Hart and these guys. I mean, they were the original hot rod guys. So really sad to see Art Chrisman pass away. He actually drove one of my dad's cars, the Beast 3, which is at the NHRA Museum out in Pomona, to get in the 200-mile-an-hour club at Bonneville back in 1951. Wow. So, I don't think he was the first member, but he might have been the second member or something of the 200-mile-an-hour club. That was so that was a pretty prestigious thing. And it's still actually a prestigious thing now to be able to go to Bonneville and go 200 miles an hour. So Art Chrisman, definitely a pioneer and a super nice guy and somebody that will be missed.
Yeah, and speaking of innovation, we've been talking about innovation of the funny cars here of recent for almost a year now. It really kind of came out at Bandimere, where the next national event is going to be here in about 10 days or so, and that's the evolution of the the header angle, and we talk about this a lot, but it has been one of the biggest innovations in the funny car class in many, many, many years. And there's been speculation out there that the NHRA had been looking at this, and behind the scenes, there were rumors that some of the people in the class were kind of complaining about the innovations of the headers, and maybe things were getting a little bit out of hand. NHRA agreed somewhat to that, and here just a couple of days ago, I believe it was on Tuesday, they came out with a cap on the header angle. And it gets really technical on that, but know that that the header angle and all that talk is probably going to be quelched here fairly soon, because there's only so far now that you can roll those headers back.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit sad. You know, when we had Cabs on last week, he was talking a little bit about having a deflector that they had on, and what they thought that might have done for the car, and now, you know, the different header angles. I don't know. I think the guys are out there trying to innovate new things and better ways to fix the mousetrap. And I don't know. I don't see a big problem with it, because it's not a really expensive thing, you know, modifying headers.
Right,
so, I mean, I could see if it was coming into you know, some sort of a modification that was going to cost all the teams, you know, $100,000 or more.
Right.
Yeah, I could see that. But gosh, it doesn't seem like that big a deal. So maybe what they're doing is they're saying, hey, hang on a second. We're not going to let any more changes happen until there's some further research done, and maybe some guys will do some testing or whatever. But I don't know. I don't see a problem with that. I mean, that's what drag racing is all about, is finding new, better ways to go fast.
Right. And to see the runs that Jack Beckman, and we'll talk to Jack here a little bit later on in the program about him going 333 miles an hour in a funny car. That is just absolutely incredible, and it's because of the innovation of the headers and how they've got them angled and what they're doing as well. There's a lot of different things that they're doing along with that to create those sorts of speeds, but I mean that's the main thing. And right now, that's what's making headlines in NHRA racing, really.
Right. Well, and Jack's got a great, unbelievable team. I mean, Jimmy Prock, John Medlin, and Chris Cunningham. I mean, any one of those three guys are a top crew chief. Well, now on Jack Beckman's car, all three of those guys are working together. Like, I mean, you know, and no, nothing against Tobler on Cab's car. I think Tobler's obviously one of the very best there is. But to have Prock, Medlin, and Chris Cunningham working on the same car, man, they've got a heck of a brain trust there. So it doesn't surprise me that they're out there running well, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if they can get another hot streak like he had last year. I mean, they kind of like they got on the hot streak just a little bit, maybe
a little soon,
a little bit too soon last year. But man, there was quite a few races there where they had the best car, and it's no big surprise, and it wouldn't surprise me to see something like that happen again. But really happy for Beckman, pulling off a win. Getting his 23rd overall win. And also, Doug Coletta fell out of the points lead with the DSR cars now. Antron winning. DSR cars now leading points in Top Fuel and Funny Car.
Yeah, and it seems like the beat goes on for maybe the theme of this weekend's race is the rich get richer, as Antron Brown, and we're not talking about money, we're talking about points. Antron Brown gets another win, and now he's the point leader by just a couple over Doug Coletta. Greg Anderson, again, gets another win this year.
6 times winning this year, Greg Anderson. That's amazing.
And it really is. And had to come back from a little bit of adversity because Shane Gray really had, and statistically, when you go back and look at the numbers, Shane Gray had the best car of the weekend, qualifying-wise in the first couple of rounds, just couldn't get it done in the semifinals against Greg Anderson. He goes on to win. So, I mean, you got to tip your cap to Greg. It wasn't like they just went out there and creamed him all weekend long. He had to kind of come back and prove that he was the best car this weekend.
Well, and Greg's been able to do that quite a few times. I don't think there's anything wrong with those guys being out there and being in the position that they're in, because they worked real hard to get into that position.
Right.
So, I'm a little bit surprised. Eric Enders, the elite teams, kind of struggled more than we really thought that they would, coming into this season, as strong as they've been the last few years. So that's a little bit of a surprise. But, they're I'm guessing they're all going to be coming around, and maybe they're just messing around until the countdown. I kind of doubt it, but
right.
You never know. But the motorcycle guys, they're again, the Heinz, Harley Davidson, Screaming Eagle, they just whipped them again down there. So I guess that wasn't that big of a surprise, but the strength of that team is incredible.
No, but the history is going to be fairly incredible, as Andrews is now one win away from catching the great Dave Schultz in wins and getting by him. When that happens, that'll be historic. Not that the Vance and Hines team isn't, but once you get into that category, you've put yourself into some really elite company. As a matter of fact, in a company all by yourself.
Well, yeah, Dave Schultz was just a super guy and a super racer. And, one thing to keep in mind, we talk all the time about, this guy passed Prudhomme, this guy passed Garlitz, this guy passed Dave Schultz.
Correct.
The thing that everybody has to remember is back in the days when Garlitz and Schultz and Prudhomme won all these races, there was only 7, maybe at the most 12 or 14 races in a year.
Yeah.
And now we have 25 races. So there's a lot more chances for guys to win races to catch them, and not taking anything away from these guys now, because obviously, they'd be winning races whether there were 7 or 11 or whatever. But the fact is that there's less chances to win in the years back when Garlitz and Dave Schultz and those guys. So that's those records, even though they're being broken now, I'm telling you, they're probably more impressive. I don't know. That might not be the right word. They were probably more difficult to attain because there wasn't as many chances to win races back when these guys were winners.
Yep, no question about it. Doug, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it. We know that you're one of the busiest guys that I know, and so we appreciate you spending a couple of minutes with us, and we'll see you back here in the Concord, North Carolina studios in a couple of weeks.
I'm looking forward to it. Be sure and tell my buddy Jack that we're proud of him.
Yeah, we absolutely will. As a matter of fact, he's on the telephone line with us, and we will talk to the funny car winner of the Route 66 Nationals. Jack Beckman will join us next.
This is The Straight Line, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. More coming up right after this.
O'Reilly. If your vehicle isn't stopping like it used to, head to O'Reilly Auto Parts and take advantage of the exclusive Do It Right rebate. Just purchase a set of Brake Best Select or Select ceramic brake pads and you'll receive a $10 O'Reilly gift card by mail. Plus, enjoy quiet, safe, worry-free braking. O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day. Limits apply. See store for details.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Ever wish your kid came with an instruction manual? I'm behavioral therapist James Lehman, and I'll show you how to change your child's behavior now with the Total Transformation, the program that helps stop defiance, backtalking, lying, acting out in school, even problems with ADD and ADHD. There's no screaming, no fighting, no frustration. Your child will listen to you again. I guarantee it.
Change your child's behavior now with the Total Transformation. Call now. 1-800-406-2945. 1-800-406-2945.
Ready to take the training wheels off your race scanner? Go to fanvision.com and upgrade your experience with FanVision. Not only will you be able to hear the race,
Dale Earnhardt Jr. gets a good run, drafting help from Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick. Jr. again pulls up alongside for the race lead.
You'll see every moment through live video, instant replays, live stats, and more.
Hi, I'm Jamie McMurray, driver of the #1 McDonald Chevrolet, and I never go to the track without my FanVision. So go to fanvision.com to rent or buy yours today.
Welcome back to The Straight Line, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Here's more with Marty Hough and Doug Herbert.
And let's welcome on right now the winner of the funny car class at the Route 66 Nationals. He is the driver of the Infinite Hero Dodge for Don Schumacher Racing. Jack Beckman joins us. Jack, congratulations on the win. Appreciate your help. Appreciate you joining us.
I had to take you off speakerphone because I'm trying to multitask. I told your producer, Daryl, I'm mopping my garage floor right now. So, yeah, there's not that many hours in the day when you have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old and a busy road schedule.
Oh, my. And as I understand it, you're going to have some cameras there soon?
Yeah, tomorrow NHRA is coming out. On my website, which is, and this is not a plug for my website, but it's kind of cool. On gofastjack.com, I got a link to the rebuild project on my first car, which is a 68 El Camino.
Yeah.
My dad bought it when I was 12. I bought it from him when I was 15. I took my driving test on my 16th birthday in that car. and it was my first race car. And it sat for 20 years, and now I'm putting it back on the street, and I'm getting a lot of help from a lot of cool companies. And like Hotchkiss Performance is coming over tomorrow. My buddy John is going to do this front suspension for it. So it's going to be a neat deal. It's great therapy. Everybody at the races keeps asking me when it's going to be done, and really my answer is I don't care. I don't have a time frame. I'm enjoying the heck out of the hands-on part of it.
Right.
And I'm a dad to my kids, and that's the most important thing when I'm home. The El Camino gets worked on in my spare time.
Yep, understand that. So I guess the question is, was it you or Jimmy Prock that put the 392 dial on the Infinite Hero Dodge on Sunday?
Well, and by the way, and I heard my buddy Doug interviewing from afar. I guess you guys must have kicked him out of the studio for the week. So make sure that I did let him know I did hear him send well wishes. But in the final round, I try to be a smart racer. And you can roll in and stage deeper.
Sure.
And it makes the reaction time look better, even though your foot moved at the same time. But it makes the ET worse because you lose rollout. And I try to be smart about trying to maintain lane choice throughout the weekend. But once you get to the final round, it doesn't matter. And my point is that 395 we ran in the final was probably another 394. I rolled in probably an inch or an inch and a half. I mean, that car was just set on kill and set on consistent. And that's a tough deal to do.
Yeah, especially when you start getting into July. There are no guarantees about weather, and obviously you can make up a lot of that. It's not a naturally aspirated car, but it's still, when you're running a couple of hun between first round and final round, that's anytime. And you say it best, Jack. Anytime you put nitro in the tank, you just never know. So if you're running a couple of hun between first round and final round, yeah, that's a consistent car.
Yeah, and the other thing is the people watching at home and the folks that read about it later don't really know what the temperature's like there. In the semifinals, we won a 392. It was a 120-degree racetrack. And let me put that in perspective. Last year at Sonoma, when we dropped everybody's jaws with a 392 that was 400ths better than the national record. In other words, that run was one of the strongest runs in the last 30 years in funny car.
Yeah.
That was on an 89-degree racetrack. And now, less than a year later, we're able to achieve those performances on a racetrack that's 30 degrees warmer. And what that means is it's far less available traction. To be able to evolve the tune-up that quickly to where these cars, and we're not the only car running that quick. I mean, there's 6 or 7 that are capable of those type of runs. But as you get more knowledge of how difficult it is to run these cars, it really blows your mind how impressive these runs are lately.
Yeah, no question about that. You mentioned the evolution. Me and Doug talked about it in the Open. NHRA coming out with the rule, or I guess a bit of a modification that's capped what that innovation is, and that's the rollback of the headers. First of all, I wanted to just kind of get your thoughts in general about that, and just specifically what that means for your team.
Well, I thought we ought to really blow their minds and put side pipes on it like the 69 Corvette. Here's basically what we've done. Last year, we tipped our headers back about 9 degrees over what would have been standard at that point. Now, Tim Wilkerson and Cruz Pedregon did it before us. We weren't the first guys to do it.
Correct.
We were the first folks that did it and stuck with it long enough to figure out what it wanted, and it made the cars significantly faster. It picked us up 6 to 8 hundredths of a second.
Jeez.
So we thought, well, if a little's good, maybe more would be better. So we went a little further. Then we went a little further. The problem was it was cooking the paint on the side of the cars. So we started making the bend a little bit longer and trying to get the pipes to not point outwards as much. And then NHRA stepped in after Vegas this year and said, okay, nothing wider than 79 inches. So the force cars just drove their cars between 2 buzzsaws 79 inches apart and cut the ends off their headers. And then since, I think they've gone away from that. We just went back to our previous headers. Well, now NHRA's looked at it, and they're not slowing us down. What they did is they went out there, and they found whoever must have the most laid-back header, and that's a 32-degree angle. Our headers aren't even on that angle. So, in other words, we could go back even further if we wanted to. But they said, okay, no more than 32 inches, no bigger than a 2 3/4 inch pipe, which everybody runs either a 2.5 or 2 3/4, and no wider than 79 inches. So I appreciate the fact that they didn't make a rule that created a bunch of scrap headers out there. Everybody can still use what they've got.
Right. Yeah, and that was one of the things that Doug had also talked about, is that we're not creating a lot of cost with this, but we're also not making a bunch of junk out there where people are just taking headers and throwing them in the garbage pile. Since then, Jack, the cars have gotten, and you've said it, and a lot of others have said it, they're a little more challenging to drive. Not that a Nitro Funny car wasn't before a challenge to drive, but now because of a lot of different things, and it starts to get really technical, but the cars are a lot more challenging to drive. Just kind of take us through that and what makes the car, quote, light to you guys.
Sure. I guess at the end of the day, the simplest way to describe it is by not pointing the thrust straight up, which would shove the car into the racetrack. It's basically made it feel like a lighter car. And in and of itself, that's not a big deal, as long as there's enough weight on the front end. You need to have at least one front tire with enough contact patch on the racetrack to make the steering inputs responsive on the racetrack. Now, you can have tires touching the track, but they're just skimming it, and you're cranking the wheel hard left, and the car's not doing anything. Yeah. So what has happened by redirecting the thrust here is it's not necessarily that it's made the front ends lighter. It's that when we're accelerating so hard, picture the weight's all trying to rotate backwards. We don't have that header down force assisting us to keep the front end planted as much. Now, you can do things like extend the wickers on the front wheel wells out a little bit, and you're just trading drag for downforce, but there's limitations to that. You can only go so far. You can take rear spoiler off, and by pushing down less hard on the rear end, it in effect puts more weight on the front end, but you're more apt to smoke the tires if the racetrack's marginal. You can bolt weight on the front of the cars, which is what most of us have done. The problem is you can only go so far forward with it, or it hits the bend on the nose of the body. So we're really kind of handcuffed as to how much we can do for extreme measures to keep these things steerable there. So maybe it's a good thing that NHRA said no more than 32 degrees.
Yeah, but it's taking you down the track at 333 miles an hour. That was a hell of a run.
Yeah, it's just mind-boggling. You know, when Matt Hagan went to 335, that Dickie Venables tune-up at Topeka, that dropped a lot of jaws.
Yeah.
And big speeds are wonderful, and a lot of times NHRA gets a bad rap for just being a responsible steward. Here's the problem. Those Goodyear tires are doing so much more than a tire should have ever been required to do. Yeah. We're putting centrifugal force on them. We're putting dynamic load on them. We're putting stress forces through the torque into them. And then it unwinds all that when you step off the throttle. And we expect them to stay together for 6 or 7 runs. Well, there's a limit to how fast you can go on one of those before you're going to start having some catastrophic issues. And I think NHRA saw Hagan's deal and said, okay, that's it. The top fuel cars already run more rev limiter than the funny cars. That's the only reason the funny cars are running the bigger speeds right now. We don't hit the rev limiter as soon as the dragsters do. We don't hit it as severely as the dragsters do. So after the 335-mile-an-hour run in the Mopar car at Topeka, NHRA pulled back our rev limiter a little bit. But all the rev limiter does is knocks timing out of the engine. It's not like the Pro Stock rev limiters that cuts out spark that will absolutely dictate max RPM. All ours do is pull ignition timing out, and it's supposed to keep the thing from revving up any higher. Well, our car on that 333 went the fastest half-track speed ever, over 285 miles an hour. And when it hit the rev limiter, it didn't drop a cylinder.
Wow.
And it's usually the rev limiters make the engines unhappy. It drops the cylinder, and that's where the speed falls way off. But that's also incredibly hard on the mechanical parts in the engine. So it might be that there's going to be another step to that rev limiter now. They might pull it back even further.
Yeah. But either way, it is a heck of a show. Jack, we know you're busy, and thank you so much for taking a couple minutes out of your day and getting ready for the NHRA cameras and doing some work on your El Camino. Congratulations on the win at Joliet, and good luck at Bandimere coming up here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, it's always so nice to get your first win out of the way, and you hope that's not going to be your last of the year. But, man, I think we got a great hot rod again with the Infinite Hero Mopar. So thanks, Marty. Thanks to Doug. Thanks to your fans, and I hope we talk again soon.
That's Jack Beckman, driver of the Infinite Hero Dodge. And when we return, really cool segment coming up here with one of the best in major leagues and one of the best in drag racing coming up.
This is The Straight Line, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. We'll have more for you right after this.
Whatever you drive, wherever you go, Hercules Tires will get you there, whether you're running on dirt or running a job. Our dependable, high-quality tires are the perfect fit for your needs. For unmatched value, selection, and warranty with industry-leading road hazard protection, there's only one choice: Hercules Tires. To learn more, visit HerculesTire.com or call 800-677-9535. Hercules Tires, ride on our strength.
O'Reilly.
If your vehicle isn't stopping like it used to, head to O'Reilly Auto Parts and take advantage of the exclusive Do It Right rebate. Just purchase a set of Brake Best Select or Select ceramic brake pads and you'll receive a $10 O'Reilly gift card by mail. Plus, enjoy quiet, safe, worry-free braking. O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day. Limits apply. See store for details.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Race cars are finally tuned for maximum performance. Freightliner trucks are too, taking into account all the factors that drive your profitability and lower your real cost of ownership. Efficient aerodynamic designs paired with the integrated Detroit powertrain maximizes fuel efficiency, uptime, quality, connectivity, and safety to give truckers peace of mind and a better return on investment. Find out how to lower your real cost of ownership at rco.freightlinertrucks.com.
You're listening to The Straight Line, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Now, it's back to Marty Hough and Doug Herbert.
Thanks to Jack Beckman for joining us on The Straight Line. Hey, want to remind you where the O'Reilly Shredder will be coming up. And if you're in the Wisconsin area, you are in luck. West Allis coming up on the 21st and then the 22nd in Milwaukee. Brookfield on the 22nd as well. And then back to Milwaukee on the 23rd. All those that you see on the screen. You can see the O'Reilly Shredder stock car. And that's a really cool deal. Just a very authentic NASCAR O'Reilly stock car there for you to show up at your local O'Reilly Auto Parts. Hey, early on in the NHRA season, 8-time Top Fuel champion and former Chicago area resident Tony Schumacher invited his good friend and one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball, the Chicago Cubs' Jake Arrieta, to a national event at Wild Horse Pass Raceway just outside of Phoenix. With the Cubs at spring training, that is. Arrieta took up Tony on the invite and was, shall we say, blown away by the experience. So Jake returned the favor. He invited Tony to Wrigley Field last week before the Route 66 Nationals to hang out on the north side of Chicago. And the Motor Racing Network's Jeff Wackerlin was there, and it looked a little bit like this.
Tony and I got to know each other a couple years ago. We live in the same neighborhood and developed a great relationship. He was nice enough to have me out in Phoenix at the races, and I was just blown away. The experience, the atmosphere was just tremendous.
Oh yeah, I brought him up to the races. They were testing. Obviously, pitching is going on there in Phoenix, Scottsdale area, and he came down. He'd never been to a drag race before, so he got to see the drag races for the first time, and said it was like getting punched by a gorilla, which is, for any NHRA fan that stood beside a Top Fuel car, it's exactly what they say.
I can't throw 300 miles an hour, so no. The speed that they travel in 3 seconds is something I've never experienced like that before. So yeah, fastball's not quite that high. If it was, I'd probably have a lot better numbers than I do right now.
Boy, you talk about good numbers for Jake Arrieta. This is a guy that threw a 31-game stretch between last year and this year, had more no-hitters than he did losses. This is not your average major leaguer, folks. Jake Arrieta, one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball over the last 2 years, and it was a fantastic piece put together there by Jeff Wackerlin and our producer Daryl Smith. there was more than a couple of Chicago Cubs that ended up going on that trip along with Arrieta, and all of them were really impressed by what happened. And it's really cool to see the reaction of major league stars, whether it's baseball or football or the stick and ball sports. They come out, big celebrities, and then all of a sudden they get a nose full of nitro, and they hear those cars wind up and take off, down the track. In less than 4 seconds, it gets everybody's attention. Thanks for everybody for joining us on The Straight Line. For Doug Herbert, for Daryl Smith, I am Marty Hough. We will talk to you next week as we will talk about Bandimere here on The Straight Line.
You've been listening to The Straight Line, presented by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Tune in again next Thursday at noon Eastern on MotorRacingNetwork.com and the MRN app. The Straight Line is the show for drag racing fans and is brought to you by Hercules Tires. This program is also available on demand at the MRN.com Media Center, or you can download it through iTunes or Stitcher. The Straight Line is a production of the Motor Racing Network. All rights reserved.